Hello, litigators. Court is now in session. All right, guys. So we got to talk about this tough, difficult subject matter as it relates to the two surviving roommates in the Idaho tragic case with Brian Koberger, the sick suspect in this case. It is a topic that I think we really need to address because it is something that the prosecutor is going to have to provide an explanation for. These two lovely young ladies here, Bethany and Dylan. Well, in particular, Dylan. Because the defense attorney's job in a criminal case is to raise reasonable doubt. And one of the key typical ways they do that is they challenge the scientific evidence involved, the fingerprinting, all that stuff, of course. But they also try to suggest other suspects who could have possibly committed the crime. And because Dylan, now, we have information that Dylan saw Brian, allegedly, and that she waited 8 hours to call the police, call 911, the defense attorney can raise certain allegations claiming that possibly and try to interject that these two roommates may have been the ones that unalived these 4 victims. And for some reason, I feel in the back of my mind that may have been one of the reasons why, because you have to think about the mind of Brian and how he's carefully thought about this. I'm starting to think he might have intentionally kept these 2 girls alive so that he could somehow suggest as an alibi or as a defense that it was these 2 ladies that unalived these other 4 victims while they were in their sleep. That they conspired to do it, that they had, and even more now he can say that with this allegation that she says she saw him and then closed herself, locked herself, and waited 8 hours. They could allege, the defense can allege, they had 8 hours to clean up the crime scene, stage it the way they wanted to, get rid of any DNA, and plant the sheath there and all that. And he just happened to be there one time at a party, and now he's, being framed for this crime. I'm just saying, that's how defense attorneys work. Their whole goal is to try to raise reasonable doubt. And some of the key typical ways they do that is through trying to interject some other person who may not have anything to do with the crime. They try to suggest that person had something to do with it. Because that you could see that there's been questions that has been raised across the country as to why Dylan didn't make that 911 call. Well, those are the same questions that the jury's going to have. And these are the type of holes in the case that the defense attorney will try to use to their advantage. So let's take a look at these articles about this situation. And just a disclaimer, I would like to say, no one on the internet should be harassing these 2 young ladies. They are victims in this case, just as much as the Idaho 4 are victims. So none of us have a right to try to judge any of them, but I am looking at this information from a legal perspective and what kind of issues can be raised in a trial. That's what I'm looking at in analyzing this particular situation with the 2 roommates. So I like this article, so let's take a look at this article. It says, Surviving Idaho Murder Roommates Bethany Funke and Dylan Mortensen, what we know. Their brush with a bloodthirsty killer was hardly discussed. Now, what one of the 2 survivors saw and heard the November 13th night 4 University Idaho students died after Brian Koberger allegedly stabbed them in their beds has been revealed. Bethany Funke and Dylan Mortensen, both 21, the sole survivors of the bloodbath, found their friends' bodies hours after the brutal attack in their off-campus home. First, the 7 weeks of the police investigation, it was reported they'd slept during the bloodbath. And the reason why it was reported that, and you can already see the authorities literally lied to the public, and they had to protect the safety of the 2 roommates. They could not disclose to the public that one of the roommates saw him because that would have endangered their life because the suspect was still on the loose. So that's why they made it sound like, oh, the roommates were still asleep to keep them safe. Now that he's in custody, they have nothing to lose. They can disclose that information. But on Thursday, a police report showed something far more chilling. Mortensen came face to face with the perpetrator just before he slunk out of the college house. Who are Bethany Funke and Dylan Mortensen? Funke and Mortensen, they're both 21 years old. And that's what makes it sad, guys, is these were all young kids. They were all 20 and 21 years old. Brian is a 28-year-old man. What does he have to do with these young kids? He sounds like a straight pervert. I don't even think these kids knew him, and will be interesting to find out. And I'm not saying it was too many years of a gap, but it just sounds kind of perverted. What was he doing? Just like getting off on looking at these girls. And like I said, I think he's an incel. That's my opinion about him. You got to watch my other video about why I think that. Ethan, so they lived with and were friends with the murdered foursome. Ethan Chapin, 20, Zana Kernodle, 20, Madison Mogan, 21, and Kaylee Consalves, 21. And we already acknowledged that Ethan and Kaylee no longer lived at that house. They were just visiting. And it was located at 1122 King Road house in Moscow, and they both were in the home during the slayings. And here is the photo of them here circled. They are the surviving roommates, Bethany and Dylan Mortensen. Very beautiful, two beautiful young ladies. That's why I feel like for some reason, I feel like maybe Brian left them alive just to kind of interject them as the ones that did it. Raises reasonable doubt. This guy carefully thought this out, guys. He already knew those two girls were alive. I'm really starting to think that. Dylan Mortensen left. So this is Dylan Mortensen here. Dylan Mortensen is here to the left. And Bethany, right, this is Bethany, were in the Moscow house when their friends were unalive. That is so scary. Oh my God, I feel so sad for these two girls. They will never be the same. Those smiles they have in that picture are forever gone. Ugh. I can't even imagine, guys. So much empathy for these girls. And like I said, I do think there's a logical explanation for why she didn't call 911. And I'll talk about that a little later after this. I mentioned it on my other video, but I'm going to mention it here too because it's a shorter video. So if you just want to click on this and talk just about the roommates, you'll have it here in this video. So floor plans show Funke and Mortensen lived on the first floor of the split level home, accessible by a door with a code lock. The second and third floors where the victims had been sleeping could be accessed through a glass screen door. So there were two different doors on the different floors. Wow. So there was a door that had a code lock on the first floor. And then there was a second door that had the glass screen door. Funke was a member of Phi Beta Phi sorority in Kernodle and Mogan. So Funke and Kernodle and Mogan were all in the same sorority, it looks like. Night of the tragedy, police have not revealed where Funke and Mortensen were in the hours before the tragedy, but confirmed they just got home after 1 a.m. The four victims made their way back to the house by 2 a.m. And so here is one of the lovely young ladies here. And she has learned a little thing. She's a little fabulous. Surviving roommates, Bethany Funke, Dylan Mortensen. So I think this is the young lady who is Dylan here. Very sad. And here is Bethany. Mortensen allegedly saw the perpetrator in the house. And here this is sweet Bethany. Poor girl. That is so sad. Poor Bethany. You know, they're so sad. Funke was in Phi Beta Phi sorority with Kernodle and Mogan. Idaho suspect. Oh, this is not really relevant. According to the police report unsealed in court, Mortensen woke up around 4 a.m. after hearing voices. She reportedly thought she heard Consalves say, "There's someone here," and crying coming from Kernodle's or Zana's room. Mortensen opened her room to find a figure clad in black clothing and mask that covered the person's mouth and nose walking towards her. Wow. She said she was locked in frozen place, but the man just walked past her and out the back sliding glass door. Mortensen then locked herself in her room. Police never revealed the identity of the 911 caller, but said it came from one of the surviving roommate phones. Investigators also have not revealed why the 11:58 a.m. phone call came nearly 8 hours after Mortensen reportedly saw the killer inside her home. See, that's where I could see this huge 8-hour gap here leaves them with no alibi, and that is going to be something that the defense attorney can attack, and they're going to try to allege that it was the roommates that planned and did this and then had time to clean up and all that. That's what I think they're going to try to do. That's why I feel it's relevant to talk about, because it's a huge gap in time, and even though we as the public don't want to talk about it legally in court, it can raise issues in the trial, because now the defense will try to interject them to make them appear to be the perpetrators in the case. Not sure if it'll be a strong argument, but that's something that they may end up doing because of that 8-hour gap. They're not going to just let that sit there and just let it slide. Any little hole or inconsistency in this case, the defense attorney is going to attack it. You better believe it, because she's going to try to raise reasonable doubt. And I hear she's a very skillful attorney. Mortensen and Funk lived on the ground floor of the off-campus house. And so here is little sick guys. Look how he smiles. So arrogant, guys. So arrogant and proud of what he did. Absolutely disgusting. Brian Kohlberg is suspected of sneaking into the college home and unaliving them. Investigators said early on that Funk and Mortensen may be key to solving the crime, and quickly ruled the two out as suspects. So the officials, they're going to have to really talk about detail upon detail how they ruled them out. That's going to be key, because like I said, the defense attorney is going to really raise havoc about that 8-hour gap and make it sound like, oh, they had an advantage. Why would they wait that long? They were obviously involved in this, stuff like that. That's what I'm thinking, guys. Police said the women were cooperative throughout the probe. It still doesn't mean the defense will not try to attack that. Aftermath. Funk and Mortensen have largely remained silent since this tragedy. The two wrote letters for their lost friends, which were read aloud by a pastor during December service for Conoto. And look, they have the little tattoos for them. That's so sad. Look at this. This has got to be so heartbreaking for them. My gosh, I can't imagine. They probably are in therapy and all kinds of things. The survivors got matching tattoos in memory of the victims. Dylan Mortensen said, "The four friends changed the way I look at life." Funk wrote, "The victims were all gifts to this world in your own special way. It won't be the same without you." That's sad. The two girls appeared to get matching tattoos to memorialize their four friends. They inked the initials of victims' names, MKXE, that is sad, on the back of their arms, along with angels, the Independent wrote. That is so sad, man. Ugh, that is heartbreaking. And now they're going to have to go through strenuous years in this trial, going through various hearings and so forth, because they're going to have to go to hearings and all that. If they call them, they may not have to go during the preliminary hearings. But if the defense wants to keep certain testimony out, they may have to come testify. But it's sad that they're going to have to relive this tragedy when the trial happens, because I'm pretty sure sick, narcissistic Brian's not going to let it slide. Do you think he's going to let it slide and just enter a plea of guilty? I highly doubt it. And the fact that it's could probably be a death penalty case, highly doubt it, guys. Highly doubt it. Let's take a look at this video, and then I'll give my analysis.
Still many unanswered questions. Why did the surviving roommates wait almost 8 hours after the murders to call 911? Why did the killer spare the life of Kaylee Gonzalez's dog? And perhaps most important, why were the lives of two roommates spared? We take a deep dive into those questions and more.
Well, people do different things under stress. And while it's detailed in the affidavit that she saw these things, we don't know that he saw anything. He's moving around in the dark. He's got this mask over his nose and his mouth. He's already done what he's going to do, or he's on his way to do it. He's already focused on where he's headed.
Let's start with the basics. Why would the murderer spare the lives of two roommates in the off campus home? According to Kohberger's probable cause affidavit, a roommate referred to as DM says she saw a figure, quote, clad in black clothing and mask that covered the person's mouth and nose walking toward her. She told authorities she was in the, quote, frozen in shock phase as the killer walked past. After that, DM locked herself in her bedroom. While appearing on Law and Crime's Sidebar podcast, legendary homicide detective Phil Waters said it's possible the murderer didn't even see DM at the time, thus sparing her life.
So he's not getting distracted with things going on around him. And remember, it's dark in there. So there's certainly, what it indicates to me is that he didn't see her. She saw him, which was certainly to her benefit.
We learned in the newly unsealed affidavit that investigators believe the murders happened between 4 and 4:25 a.m. on November 13th. But we also know a 911 call was not made until 11:58 a.m., nearly 8 hours later. Waters says it's possible DM was under a high level of stress or didn't know what happened, so she didn't react.
She locked the door and she was away from it, and she saw the guy leave. So maybe she thought at that point, he's gone. I'm locked in and we're done here, not having any idea what had actually happened.
Both surviving roommates have received a lot of flack for the length it took to call 911, but it's also important to consider they could have been in a state of shock, intoxicated, or even both. In the initial days of the investigation, though, Idaho police said the 911 call would not be released as it was part of the ongoing investigation. But just days before Kohberger was arrested, Moscow Police Chief James Fry hinted that it could soon be released.
I think it'll be released when the prosecution believes that we can release that. That may be at trial. That may be before then.
Once the call is made public, we'll be sure to circle back with that information. But for now, let's take a look at the layout of the home. What's important?
So the first thing I'd have to say for my theory is, like I was saying before, this is a sorority house. They're used to a lot of traffic coming in and out of this house. It's so much traffic, and there's been so many different people there in different parties. There's been a lot of police officers coming there for noise complaints. In fact, we saw some of that video footage. So another thing to know about is sorority life. There's always a lot of pranks that go on. We'll have frat brothers come over and pull pranks, and just all the different traffic in that house that happens on almost a daily basis. They party a lot. In fact, most of them that night came back from parties. Well, yeah, all of them did. Zana and Konodo came back from a sorority party. Kaylee and our poor Maddie, they came back from the bar. So, and I'm not sure where the other two roommates came back from, but it looks like they came back at 1 o'clock in the morning too. So they all had been out partying. So I don't think she suspected it was anything bad going on. I think that because she's so used to the traffic going on, when she first opened the door and she heard one of the roommates say, "There's someone in the house," she looked out to see what was going on. And then when she didn't really hear anything, any other commotion, she went back in. She's like, "Oh, okay, maybe they're just pulling a prank." Or, probably somebody came with somebody's DoorDash or whatever, and then just dismissed it, because used to a lot of traffic in the house anyway. Didn't think anything of it because it's probably some frat brother or somebody came in. Maybe one of Ethan's frat brothers came over to drop something off. She didn't think anything of it. And especially, we're not hearing any information about blood-curdling screams or anything. So I'm just still surprised the scene wasn't as chaotic as I would expect if someone's being stabbed to death. I would think people would be screaming their lungs out, but according to the information provided to us, all Dylan heard was just some crying, and then a voice saying, "It's okay, I'll help you." Now that part, when she came out the third time and heard that particular statement and the crying, again, I think she might have just thought, "Oh, that's Zana and Ethan arguing or whatever, and he's consoling her. So it looks like he's got it taken care of. I don't need to interject because he said he is going to take care of it. So go back in the room." No big deal. Again, you got to look at the culture of this household. Then finally, when she comes out the third time and she sees this guy in black and she is in shock phase and she goes back and closes the door. Okay, now you would say, well, how come she didn't call 911? I thought that too when I first heard that. I was like, man, why not call 911? But I think, again, she might have dismissed it and might have thought, okay, look, she probably closed her door, locked her door, said, I don't know what kind of prank they're playing on us tonight. I don't got time for these frat brothers. I'm gonna lock my door because I'm not trying to be a part of it tonight. And maybe she was afraid a little bit, but then she just talked herself out and probably said, come on. She probably talked to herself and was like, come on, Dylan, you're overreacting. Just calm down. Everything's good. And after Brian left, if that was him who did it allegedly, the house was pitch quiet. So she probably thought, well, I don't hear any more sounds. I don't hear any more commotion. It looks like maybe I was just overreacting. You know, I was being paranoid and was like, oh, whatever, and then went to sleep. That's what I really think happened in this situation. Not to mention, like the news reporters are saying, it was a party night, guys. It was November 13th. What day was that? Let me see what day that was, because they were out partying on that day. I'm trying to see, was that a Friday? What kind of day that was? Let's see. November 13th was a Sunday. So yeah, it's a day where people go out and still party on Sundays, especially sorority girls. So who knows if she hadn't had some drinks and she was a little tipsy too. Mind you, she was awakened by them. She was already asleep, and then she heard the commotion, and that's when she woke up. So she was a little dazed too. So I honestly give her the benefit of the doubt. The reason why I bring it up, because I think it is an area where the defense will try to take advantage of that because of this large 8-hour gap. They can easily utilize this gap to argue now that Dylan and Bethany conspired to commit these killings and that they were the ones that in fact committed it and planted the evidence to try to frame Brian, when in reality, it was them. And Brian can just argue, yeah, I was over the house multiple times because I went to the frat parties. They may not have noticed me because I may not have hung out a lot about the party, but I just hung out, drank, and just, stayed there for a little bit and left. So that's what I'm saying. You have to look at it from the perspective of what kind of evidence that the defense will use to their advantage. And that's what I think they will do. Now I want to finish this video up because this video does give us a layout of the house, and that's pretty important in the evidence. So let's hear what she has to say.
To note is that DM's bedroom was on the second floor, just feet from where Xana Kernodle and Ethan Chapin were stabbed to death.
I love this layout because it really tells us where everything is. So here we can see the living room. We see the stairs right here where the first floor is. This is the front of the house. This house is a pretty interesting makeup of the house. The slider door is right here, and this is the kitchen and the sink. So this is where they think he came in from. So this would have been Dylan's room then. Interesting. And then we got Xana and Ethan's room over here. So he must have came in, went straight into their room. This man did this on purpose. He knew they were there too. There's stairs, you can go down there. But because he went to this house 12 different times, he knew about the other two roommates. He intentionally left them alive. These were his targets. They were his targets. That's why he unalived them and stalked them for 12 times and for several months. It seems like it started back in August, which is quite disturbing, guys. Again, a lot of the things that he did in this crime scene really reminds me of BTK's first killing. You guys need to go back and study that because you'll see a lot of similarities. It will help you understand this particular tragedy because he did a lot of the similar things. But I think he intentionally kept them alive because that does also give him another argument to try to interject them into the crime scene to say they did it. Because they go up and they go in there and they see the crime scene. What if they touch stuff in there? What if their DNA is in there? And again, now we have the defense attorney and their investigators going in and doing their own investigation now. In fact, the defense attorney and her hired investigators were just seen there, and they were there for about 5 hours one other day. So what are they going to do? They're going to go in there and they're going to try to get evidence, and they can try to, if say one of these two roommates happened to go in this room and touch anything when they were trying to, figure out what the heck's going on, the defense is going to try to raise that as a reasonable doubt argument. So I think it's important to look into. But I like that they have this whole makeup of the house there. We can kind of see a makeup. We can see the house a little bit more clear. So let's hear more of what she has to say.
Speaking to Sidebar podcast host Jesse Weber before Kohberger's arrest, YouTuber and retired crime scene reconstructionist Johnny Law broke down the layout of the home.
Well, we know if you're looking at the sketch in 2B that's probably more than likely Zaina's room. That's where she stayed, where Ethan probably would have been staying with her on November 13th.
That means, according to the sketch, DM was staying in room 2A at the time. She told investigators she opened her bedroom door 3 times the morning of the murders, once when she heard what she believed to be Kaylee Gonzalez's dog on the 3rd floor. Gonzalez's ex-boyfriend, Jack DeCur, told investigators he shared the dog named Murphy with her. According to court documents, Murphy was found unharmed in Gonzalez's room on the 3rd floor when investigators arrived. Now, some online trial watchers have since connected this with suspect Brian Kohberger's vegan diet. As Law and Crime has reported, the Latah County Jail is working to accommodate Kohberger's vegan diet, which is known widely as a lifestyle choice made by animal activists. So
I highly doubt Brian's an animal activist. I don't think that's the right reason why he didn't do it. I don't. I think, in my opinion, I think he was trying to emulate how BTK did his killings. In all the different killings that BTK did, he never killed the dogs. He always left the dogs alive. It was like kind of like a signature thing that he did. I do think Brian, in my opinion, would kill an animal. More, yes, but not in this case. I think he left that dog alive on purpose. It also gives him another alibi. Since he stalked the heck out of this family, leaving the dog alive can also interject someone like Jack DeCur in the case to make it look like Jack DeCur had motive to unalive because he wanted the dog back. All the things that, a lot of YouTubers were making up. He could have thought about that too on the other end of to say, hey, if I leave the dog alive, that also gives another motive for other people. This guy really carefully thought this stuff out and stalked these people. So he knew the different people in their lives also and their roles that they played. He knew everything about them. Look, he did this for several months, guys. What did you think he knew about them? Also, I still think that Brian had something to do with filleting that dog. The dog that was filleted only 3 miles away. He was sending a message to the victims. Notice the distance, the proximity of the tragedy with the dog. The dog was killed, skinned to death and filleted only 3 miles from that house where the Idaho killings happened. The location for me, guys. And not to mention, Brian was over around that area multiple times, as the authorities said. I think the authorities need to look into the night of the killing of that dog and look into Brian's pings that night, because they probably will find that he was over there. So I don't think that Brian is not capable of unaliving a dog. I think this theory that they're coming with, I respectfully disagree. I don't think Brian's that kind of vegan. He became a vegan to lose weight. That was his whole purpose of becoming a vegan. Not because he cared about he was an animal activist rights person. No, that's not what he was. Based upon the information out there, he was bullied because he was overweight as a child and even bullied by girls throughout his childhood. They would throw things at him and all kinds of things. And so in order to lose the weight, he became vegan, and he just became very obsessive about it. It became like an obsessive compulsive disorder, like a habit. But not because he had any care for animals. So I don't think this man, I think they need to stop giving this man too much benefit of the doubt. They're trying to generalize who he is. And he, to me, would have been a serial killer if he would have got away with it. He would have been. He only went to school to really study himself. So I don't agree with him.
could the murderer's love of animals have kept Murphy safe? According to roommate DM, around the same time that she heard noises from the dog, she heard Gonzalez say something to the effect of, quote, "There's someone here." According to the affidavit, nearby security camera footage picks up repeated sounds of a dog barking at about 4:17 a.m. After that, Diem says she heard a male voice say something like, quote, "It's okay, I'm going to help you," to who she believed was Kernodle.
Oh my gosh, this makes sense now, guys. You remember when Diem or Dylan said she heard Consalves say there's someone here? Now I do believe it was Consalves that said that because her dog started barking and she knows that dog inside and out. And whenever someone comes to that house, the dog always barks. So when she was playing with her dog and the dog started barking, that clued Kaylee in on that someone else was in that house. Now it's making sense to me. The dog alerted Kaylee that someone was in the house because Kaylee knows her dog very well. And she knows habitually the dog will bark if someone that's not familiar comes to that house. It's like autopilot for the dog to bark. So once her dog started barking wildly, she knew something was wrong. Now it's making sense to me. What do you guys think about that? What do you think about about the dog barking? Do you think the dog was warning Kaylee and Kaylee took it as a warning and that's when she said there's someone else here?
The next time Diem opened her door, she saw the suspect, who she described as a man with bushy eyebrows. Since his arrest, many have noted Kohberger's eyebrows, saying they matched Diem's description of the murder suspect. It's important to note, though, Kohberger is suspected of the murderers, but has not yet been convicted of the crime, nor has he pleaded guilty. And while the release of the affidavit finally gives us the surviving roommate's perspective from the night of the murders, it's not the first time we're hearing from them. Only identified through the initials DM and BF in the affidavit, surviving roommates Dylan Mortensen and Bethany Funke spoke out at a memorial service for the victims prior to Kohberger's arrest. A pastor read letters from both Mortensen and Funke.
To my four best friends who deserve to live a long, happy life, my life was greatly impacted to have known these four beautiful people. My people who changed my life in so many ways and made me so happy.
Though an arrest has been made and the affidavit released, there are still many unanswered questions in this high-profile case. Was there a motive in the quadruple slaying? Did the suspect know any of the victims? For now, though, Kohberger is due back in Latah County Court on January 12th.
That smile irks me every time. Every time he smiles like that, it irks me. So sinister. Yes, there was a motive. Like I said, the motive was a very sadistic physical gratification. This man is an incel, in my opinion. He has been repeatedly rejected by women. And he had this sick obsession, perverted obsession with one or multiple of these women involved in this tragedy. These women symbolized the type of women that he desired, but that he could never, ever get. And so he had this physical aggression towards them to not only seek perverted gratification from it, but also as a way to exert aggression on the very individuals that symbolized the objective desire that he wanted, perverted desires he wanted his whole life. It reminds me of BTK, and BTK was the same way. He got physical gratification from binding, torturing, and unaliving women. Unfortunately, sometimes men had to be unalive because they were there. Wrong place, wrong time. Same thing in this case with with Ethan being there. Wrong place, wrong time. So that's what I think. You guys let me know what you think the possible motive is. Again, this is all my opinions. Brian is presumed innocent until proven guilty.
Long Crime Network will bring you the latest developments from that hearing next week. Reporting for Long Crime Network, I'm Sierra Gillespie.
Organize your business all in one.
So let me know what you guys think about all this. I want to caution you guys as the public to be kind to be gracious and merciful to the two roommates. Let's wait and hear what they have to say at the trial, because you better believe they will have a statement and an explanation. And Dylan in particular will have an explanation for why she did not call 911. I know it will be a long wait for us to have to wait to hear her explanation, but I'm pretty sure it's justified. I wish them healing and peace during their journey to recovery, and I pray we proceed to continue to fight for justice for the Idaho 4. Take care and have a lovely day.